All right, we're live. Shout out to everyone from the SNL stream. We were a couple thousand deep there. Still a live edition of the locker room here. Texans very active today, but they didn't make a pick. Meanwhile, star power in the division increases, at least relative to this draft. Cam Ward goes number 1 overall to the Titans. The Jags then trade up to number 2. They take Travis Hunter, and the Colts wanted Tyler Warren. There was an obsession, and all they had to do was sit there, and they got Tyler Warren. So probably 3 of the top 5 guys that are near the top of the betting odds for Rookie of the Year, they are in the AFC South. And I will say this, and I'm not just trying to fire shots at the old Oilers. Y'all had the number 1 pick in the draft, and you took a quarterback. Quite frankly, that's the least threatening move I think that was made in this division. So it is the locker room, number 1 source for Texans digital content. Joining me, special guest Mike Meltser. Melts, we'll get into what the Texans did. Do you think I said anything that you disagree with there when it comes to just kind of a blah Cam Ward? And then like Tyler Warren and Travis Hunter get a lot more attention from me, and I think they're much more of a threat than Cam Ward going to the organization without an identity.
My only slight disagreement is, remember the Week 18 game at the very end when Ross Tucker and Feely and Catalan were talking about what Tennessee was going to do at number 1, and they were basically like, look, you can't pass on a quarterback at number 1. And I know you don't want to force the issue, but Landry, they had to, in terms of resuscitating the organization, do something at quarterback. Now, maybe you probably
it's a bad pick. I'm just saying it as far as like threatening.
Oh, I agree. Yes. I don't think they're a threat right now. The Jaguars, and especially, Indianapolis, I really like them picking Tyler Warren. They made the bigger splashes as far as them competing with the Texans in 2025.
Yeah. It's just whatever with that pick. And then there's the Texans. The Texans made a couple of trades. They added some day 2 picks, and then the Texans, they trade back, and they end up getting picks 34, 99, and a 2026 third rounder from the Giants, who trade up and take Jackson Dart. What were your thoughts on what the Texans did?
I like the value they got in the trade down, because I don't know if I've been watching the draft, Landry, for decades, and I know people don't track this kind of stuff, but I can't believe how poorly the board fell for them. And we knew the players, we know the needs. We've been talking about them for 3 or 4 months. I thought once the Cowboys took Tyler Booker at number 12, I was like, uh-oh. Because once that happened, I'm like, there are going to be some linemen going. And I am rarely shocked by things, Landry. I want like an oral history of what the hell happened at number 23 with Green Bay taking Matthew Golden, and the Vikings sitting and picking Donovan Jackson at number 24, because I know Nick Caserio's talking now. We'll talk about what he's saying, his quotes, all of it. And I'm sure the Texans will like the guys they pick tomorrow night, because they have 5 picks tomorrow. I'm sure they will like the guys they pick. But I also believe that had Golden or Jackson fallen to 25, I believe they would have taken those guys. And I'm just blown away that Green Bay, like we saw Green Bay last year against Houston when they beat them on that last second field goal. I feel like they have like 4 pretty good number 2 or number 3 receivers. And I like Matthew Golden, but like he's not going to be a number 1 receiver in the NFL. And while I like Donovan Jackson, my thing with Minnesota was, with all of their trades the last couple of years, they have really limited draft capital. I was shocked, especially considering the 2 trade-ups that came next, the Giants with Houston, and then the Falcons thing with the Rams, which we'll have to talk about, that Minnesota just sat and picked at number 24. I am rarely shocked by things. I'm shocked by what happened at 23 and 24. I'm still in shock by that.
Yeah, I was shocked that Minnesota made a pick, especially if there were so many teams that wanted to trade up. That's yes. To me, when you have 4 picks, when you're a team that really, really has a lot of needs, and I know like they're not your typical 20-win team because they changed the quarterback, and I think at the very least, I don't think their quarterback play, unless they're taking Aaron Rodgers, unless they have Aaron Rodgers, which could change things. Like unless Aaron Rodgers is committed to playing in Minnesota and maybe they're just trying to protect him and all that, it just feels like if you have JJ McCarthy, if that's the direction you're going to go, then you probably want to stockpile picks. But I also believe that Aaron Rodgers knows what team he's playing for. So maybe we're talking about whether it's Pittsburgh or Minnesota drafting with the understanding that he's going to play there and they're going to make that official after the draft.
Landry, I have a specific question for you. So Nick Caserio said in the last couple of minutes, I know we'll get to his quotes.
We'll hear from him, yeah. We'll go live in a second.
But one specific thing he said is that the mid to upper teens is when the Texans knew they were going to move out of the first round. Do you believe that based on, let me count, Ibuka going at 19, Golden 23, and Jackson at 24? Do you, an instant reaction, do you believe that quote from Caserio?
The mid to late teens?
Yes, mid to upper teens is when they knew they were going to move out of the first round.
Well, maybe
I question that. I question that myself, my instinct.
Maybe they like Walter Nolan. Maybe there was a possibility that D'Amico would think that he could be the guy to turn around Walter Nolan. Maybe they liked Ibuka. But
I'm sure they liked Ibuka.
But that right there, like if we're going to translate it, it basically means they didn't like Jackson and they didn't like Golden.
Yeah, and that based on the reporting, and again, these are like state secrets, so who knows? But I just have a hard time believing they didn't like either one of those guys, and the fact that they went just before the Texans picked at number 25.
Yeah,
it's always possible, Landry, because life is complicated, that Nick Caserio might like Matthew Golden and might have liked Donovan Jackson and could have still traded down even if they were there because he liked the value that he got. But it just seems almost like, what a coincidence that, I know Texans Cap mentioned they weren't in on Gray Zabel, so he goes 18. Ibuka 19. Hampton, who I started thinking about at 20, he goes off at 22. Golden 23, Jackson 24. It's like all these guys that we had been talking about the last couple of months for this football team.
Yeah, I wonder what they thought when Booker went 12. Because that, to me, like if I was like, if you told me that the Texans and the reports today, and I don't, Diana Rossini, I trust because she's been all over the Texans. Like I've said, me and Cody have talked about this. We've said, look, if Diana Rossini says something, then I think you have to like trust it at this point. Like just based on she's over half the time she's the first one with the news. So she has some sort of connect there. But when she said that they were actively looking to trade up, I had two names that I was thinking. And one was Banks. Like I never believed that Banks was falling as much as it was discussed. And the other one was maybe Booker, but maybe just to get out of that 25 to 20 cluster. So the reason I'm saying that is that's before the teens. So if you're talking mid-teens, then you're talking if Nick Caserio, and we'll listen to Nick Caserio in a second. We'll pause and react because I know this is one of your favorite things to do. That means that they're talking about Ibuka and maybe they're talking about Zabel, but Texans Cap says that they weren't involved in Zabel. So,
well, one other thing, Landry, to your point about Diana Rossini being plugged in. Remember, Daniel Jeremiah 2 years ago was the one guy in his final mock draft in 2023 who had the Texans going C.J. Stroud and then trading back up for Will Anderson. A few weeks ago, he mentioned with Houston that everyone was linking the Texans with the law firm of Booker or Banks. So that kind of goes to your point. Maybe two people. I know Daniel is an analyst, not a reporter, but he was on it 2 years ago. He must have some sources in Houston. And based on the Nick Caserio quotes and your analysis of it, to be fair, maybe they loved Booker, Banks, and at that point, when those guys go so early, they're preparing for a trade down. I could see that. It's just, what a coincidence that Golden and Jackson go at 23 and 24.
Yeah, for sure. Let's hear from Nick Caserio and hear what the hell he's got to say. God, he ain't going to sleep tonight. You got a busy day tomorrow, buddy. You got to readjust that board and figure some stuff out. But let's hear what old Nick had to say at his press conference. This should be interesting.
Double microphone. All right, how's everybody doing? Yeah, we're in a good spot. Feel really good about where we are. We went into the day, I'd say honestly, we had three different scenarios: trade up, stay 25 and pick, trade back. I mean, D'Amico and I have been talking about it basically for 2-3 days. Here are some different scenarios. Here are some possibilities. I don't want to say we talked.
So he said the scenarios were trade up or trade back.
Or
So
stay.
there was no middle ground. So that was, so he's saying damn, Nick, just jumping right into it, man. You're doing people's jobs, because I don't think you would have been asked those questions. So there you go.
To the whole league, but we probably talked to the whole league on every different level. So, there are some players that we identified, some were out of reach, some, in the end, trades are a byproduct of teams willing to make a decision to move or not. So, we fell at 25, that was the best thing for us. Puts us in a pretty good spot. 2 2s, 3 3s, picked up another 3 next year. So, I mean, we'll deal with tomorrow. We think we're going to get some pretty good football players tomorrow. We felt like the value to draft was basically in the middle. So we'll try to take advantage of our opportunities here tomorrow. Put ourselves in a pretty good position next year as well. 1, 2 2s, 2 3s, 2 4s. So, I mean, we've always talked about just creating as much flexibility and optionality for us as possible. And that's where we are. So, I mean, there's 2 more days of the draft that are left. We'll see how these next few days go. I'll try to, make good, smart decisions tomorrow. Trust our process, trust our evaluations. And then once we get through the draft, kind of flip the page and kind of go to the next phase. So we're going to get good football players. D'Amico and I feel really good about tomorrow. So, we'll kind of see what happens.
The offensive line then sort of go off the board. Was that something you pretty much expected, kind of with the way the consensus on grades?
Yeah, I don't think there was really a consensus on a lot of grades. I mean, honestly.
Okay, so I guess I screwed up. I guess he said stay, trade back, or trade up. So we pulled the Jeremy Fowler.
3 scenarios, the 3 possibilities.
I missed the Captain Obvious one, so that's on me.
If you look at some of these mocks, like where some of the guys were mocked and where they went, it wasn't even close. So, which again, like players come off the board when they come off the board. So it's all we can do is go through our information, try to figure out like where we think the best spot for us to take that player. So again, we made multiple calls. I would say picking a lot higher than where we were. So teams aren't interested.
Does he seem happy?
That's what I'm trying to gauge. He seems
a little frustrated, doesn't he?
A little bit. He has energy. Like he's got energy right now. I'm just trying to figure out if it's anger, frustration.
Maybe he's tired.
They're not interested. Nothing we can do about it.
He does get up early, probably. He's probably in bed by now, usually, right?
Maybe. Oh yeah.
Yeah, probably like way before we probably were picking. So, I mean, we were kind of looking, let's say, in the upper teens there a little bit. There were some opportunities. Could kind of move. All right, what are the teams going to do? So we were talking about it. Wasn't like wait until 25 and all of a sudden, like, I mean, at one point, I think we had 3 or 4 trades like potentially on the board before we got to 25. And then when we got to 25, we still had a couple scenarios. Some teams were looking at some situations. So, we took what we felt was the best offer and what the best decision for us was at that time. So we made the move.
Sorry, were you saying like somewhere in the teens was like when you realized that?
What's up, Kunkel?
Yeah, not like I would say middle teens, middle to kind of upper teens.
Okay.
Like start to look a little bit like, all right, what are we looking at? What are our options? All right, where are some of these teams? And trying to kind of get an idea. As again, not wait till 25. I'd say some teams had a pretty good idea in that 18, 19, 20, they were potentially looking to move out. So then it's all right, who are you moving out for? What are you doing? What do you have to give up? So those are all the things. Honestly, I mean, I know we didn't pick, but like we probably were more active and had as many discussions as any draft has been a part of. So that's the thing about, and we've talked about this, everything's fluid. You just got to be flexible. You got to be adaptable. You got to be ready to move. Got to take the information. Have a pretty good sense or feel for what you think's going on the rest of the league. I mean, honestly, a lot of the guys that were picked and where they were picked didn't surprise us. They may have surprised some other people because they weren't thought of to go that high. But honestly, I mean, D'Amico and I talked before the draft, and we said, when I talked to even some agents, this guy's going to go way higher than people think he's going to go. And they agreed. And, we were right. Doesn't mean we're right on everything. It just means we had a sense and feel for maybe how we thought this was going to go. So,
Dang, interrupted him, man. He was going. So it is the locker room. Landry Locker, Mike Meltser with you. Any big takeaways here? There is a theory in the chat that I like. Let's go to the soup first, the super chat.
Swarm.
He says, I think if Golden is on the board, we stick and pick. We will never know. I thought that was the case with Jameson Williams in 2022. So we will never know. There's a theory in the chat that I think you might like.
Okay.
This is right up your alley, Mike. Before we hear from Nick Caserio, he's pissed because he saw the Atlanta trade.
I thought about that. And I don't know if anyone has asked Nick about that trade and whether the Falcons tried to put in a phone call, but someone should at some point. It doesn't have to be tonight, but it should be at some point in the next couple of days. Just little Mike Meltser tidbit there. If people don't know, the Falcons move now. Keep in mind, they moved from 46 to 26 to get James Pierce, and they gave up a future first-round pick in 2026 to grab.
And Atlanta might not be good. Like, there's a decent chance they might not be great.
Yeah, I think they'll be fairly decent, weak division, but I do wonder if you're Nick Caserio, maybe there's not the willingness to go all the way from 25 to 46 because that's a whole different range of players. But man, a future first-round pick in 2026 in probably a more talented draft. I think it's a viable theory. Nick sounds like someone who
he's given a lot of information. He's going pretty detailed.
Yeah, and he's talking. He genuinely sounds like he was talking to all sorts of teams about both trades up the board and down the board, and the only thing that materialized was going down the board. Here's my biggest takeaway, Landry, from that is the Texans clearly, based on his comments, tried to trade up for at least 1 to 3 players, whether it's Banks or Booker or someone along those lines, and they were rebuffed. That's my biggest takeaway.
I think when he said, and shout out to everyone in the chat for helping me out. He said we were going to trade up, trade back, or stay put. Yeah, okay, thanks. But I think that the Banks thing was. I think they knew that was garbage.
Well, let me also add to that point. When Nick talked about him and D'Amico, or just him talking to the agents about, hey, we think these guys might go higher than other people are thinking, I wonder if he's talking about Kelvin Banks and he's talking about Booker especially, who, like, I think there was a thought for a while that if he went to 25, that might be a bit of a reach, and they had the feeling of like, no, these guys are going to go way higher. So you combine him saying, we talked about teams about trading up, we talked to agents, we ended up being right about some guys going way higher. That to me indicates that they tried to trade up for a few guys and the price just wasn't right for them. That's my takeaway.
Is Nick pissed? Let's hear more from the man.
The valuation of your board, I haven't seen it. Do you consider the net present value enhanced now going into tomorrow?
They had a pick.
What do you mean by that?
Means that you can take whatever you value your board now, that you got more dollars to deal with now.
We have, I would say, more flexibility tomorrow than we did today going into day 2. So, we have some optionality. We have the ability to honestly to kind of move up or down a little bit. So there's still a number of good players up there that we really like. We're not going to get everybody, but there's probably going to be some players that we come out with that we feel good about and that we feel are going to be an asset to our program.
Nick, you've had a lot of success since you've been here in finding starters outside of the first round. Is that something that's in your head when you're thinking of getting out of the first round to go not that much lower, really?
Yeah, we don't necessarily view it that way, Christy. I think it's more of look at the players. Where do we have the player kind of graded? Where do we have to position ourselves?
This is Caserio. We know.
It's a collaborative effort. I mean, the coaches have input. Scouts have input. So, this is why we put the work in. They put the work in starting in August to get to this point. So we value all the information. We try to process it. We try to aggregate it and just try to create as best a profile as we can on the player. And we're not, we're drafting a starter, we're drafting a backup. Here's what we think it is. We put a grade on the player. Our values are relative to what we think the role is going to be. We're not a round-based team. That we haven't drafted that way. That's not how we evaluate and grade the players. So we assign a grade relative to what we think the role is going to be. And there's no numerical value associated with that. And then based off that, then we try to put them in a spot and pick the players where we feel is appropriate relative to their value. And in the end, whenever we pick them, it's just about getting them in the building. Once they're here, it doesn't really matter where they were picked. It's about what they do with their opportunities. So, Henry got picked in the 5th round, and he led our team in tackles last year. So, I'm not sure anybody had that in their bingo card when we drafted Henry. We thought Henry was going to be a good, solid player. How big of a role he had for himself, ultimately, it's going to be how good the player is with what he's asked to do.
Hold on.
Take a few more.
Hold on. Buddy, you just traded out of the first round and you added a bunch of second-round picks and you haven't drafted a player already. I don't want to hear about Henry To'oTo'o as something that's going to make me think that you're going to maximize what you got here. This is the same thing that Bill O'Brien used to do, where he would talk about like Buddy Hield or something like that. Like not Buddy Hield, Buddy Howell. Like, and it's like, dude, people are wanting like some impact players. You've actually drafted some impact players on day 2. Like, you can take that Henry To'o bingo card and shove it where the sun don't shine. I don't care about Henry To'o when we're talking about round 1 and round 2. Like what? That's
Landry.
Example-is. That's awesome.
That was the second kind of I'm more amused by anything. That's like the second pot shot he's taken. First, it was about the mock drafters getting people wrong as far as people going like higher than expected or lower than expected. And now it's basically like, oh, these people thought this about Henry To'o when it's really not on point to what actually happened with this team tonight.
Right now, like you're flexing about Henry To'o. Okay, did people also didn't have Christian Harris missing half the whole majority of the fucking season? Like,
They
so
did
what
not.
are you saying? Like, that's what your flex is, man. He needs to get some sleep, man. I said Nick needs to go to bed, man. He usually gets up at 5. Go get you 5 hours of sleep. Get you some coffee, man. Henry, we're getting a Henry To'o flex. Come on, man. You're better than this, Nick. You've drafted Nico Collins on day 2. You've drafted Kamari Lassiter. You've drafted Kalen Bullock. You've done all right, man. I don't need a Henry To'o flex. Come on, brother.
Agreeing to a trade up more so about not agreeing to the value that you saw with other teams, or was it more so your players coming off the board earlier?
Trades are just two parties have to agree on what they think their value is. And say for the most part, you're in the ballpark. Now, if something's so egregious, you have to make the determination, okay, is it worth essentially forfeiting 3 for 1 for who, for what? So, I mean, you have to weigh that calculus. Most teams kind of view the trade value similarly. There's some teams, they view it a little bit differently. So, like, we can't control that. So here's the terms. Here's what we think that position is worth. Here's what we think that spot is worth. If you agree, great. If you don't, no problem. Keep moving.
You said that you and D'Amico have said that you all don't draft for need, you draft for best player available. And when you all started getting close to the time to pick, did you not feel that there was any best players available that would have fit this team or would have been day 1 starters?
Yeah, we don't like go into the draft and say this guy's going to be a day 1 starter. What's the role? How do we value it? What's the opportunity cost? Pick the player, or if we don't pick the player, here's what we get in return. So we could have very easily picked, but when we looked at the time, we just felt like that value for the trade made a lot of sense from a big picture organizational planning. So that's why we made the decision that we did.
With the offensive line going right before you, had you guys already kind of at that point thought, hey, we're going to trade Nick Eatsted, just like that you're going to move back?
I mean, I think we were prepared for either way. So look, if we're always prepared to pick at 25, like we had some parameters in place already before we got to our pick, like I said a little bit earlier. So I'd say that pick didn't really have any bearing or any relevance necessarily. So, you know, when the pick goes in, and then you adjust and react accordingly.
What you all did,
A couple more.
with what you all did today, is that as far as with the trade before the draft and then you traded back during the draft, is that big picture and that future that a lot of, you know, fans or media members don't see, that you see from behind the scenes, knowing that you're building the foundation for the future for this team?
Yeah, I think it's two separate entities. I think the trade earlier today was really more about positioning. So we were at 166. We didn't have a 6. We had the 2 7s. It was really about positioning. So the player that you potentially draft at 166, how different is going to be at 179. So we were able to kind of recoup some 6, recoup some 7s. Maybe that gives us some flexibility either tomorrow or on Saturday. If we get to Saturday, maybe there's an opportunity for us to identify a player that we feel potentially could have an opportunity in our program. Xavier Hutchinson was a 6th-round pick. JP was a 6th-round pick. So you never really know. It just gives you more bites at the apple. So that one, I would say, was more about positioning. I would say the trades that we did today were more about like creating a little bit more flexibility and optionality and giving us, you know, just an opportunity potentially to kind of move around a little bit more. Like going in, I think we had the 2, we had 58. Then we had the 2/3. We didn't have a 4th. You know, we moved the 5th out. So, you know, we were able to kind of recoup a couple extra picks. So you don't really go into the draft and say, this is what's going to happen. I think you kind of have to take the information as it comes and just be able to adjust and adapt. And I think that's one of the things that we've always, I mean, I've probably said this 1,000 times, just the flexibility, be adaptable, be ready to adjust, take the information in, and then just make the decision that you think is best for the organization.
You said you all were ready to pick at number 25. Was the pick that you all might have picked, is it still on the board?
Good question. Actually, one of the players that we were talking about is actually still on the board. Yeah, so it's a good question. So whether or not we actually pick the player, like we'll see if that actually happens. So, but
some of those assets that you built up as far as like, the trades and the assets that you got from the trades, could that also be used later on to maybe trade with a team for another player?
Sure. Look, and I've said this. You guys have heard me say this. The draft's a draft. It's not the only team building opportunity. So we get through the draft. There's a heightened sense of awareness and there's a lot of hype and everybody loves the draft. I love the draft. I'm not trying to minimize the draft, but okay, it's just one fixed point. Once you get through the draft, it's April, May, June, July, August, September, through the season. There's opportunities. And then part of it is understanding the league, understanding as many players as possible. And if there's an opportunity for us where you can use a 3rd round pick next year or use a 2 to acquire a player that you feel makes sense. Now there's a financial component as well. You know, the contract has to fit and all those types of things. So we look at everything. Like we're never going to eliminate one thing or never be so fixated like a lot of people are on one particular aspect of team building. So that's just not how you build a team. So other sports approach it the same way. Look at, I mean, honestly, like how many 1st round picks is the Oklahoma City Thunder had, like 400. So and they got a pretty good team. So, I mean, nobody thought probably when Sam was moving all those picks. So, I mean, look around, like there's no one size fits all model. So we just try to use our information, try to make good decisions. D'Amico and I talk continuously, regularly. I mean, he's sick of probably seeing my face. That's okay. That's why he wants me to put this hat on. So, but like we're both excited about where we are, even though we didn't pick tonight. Like he and I have as much energy tonight as we did going into the draft, and we're excited for the opportunity tomorrow. Get some rest, kind of recalibrate, see what our options are, and be ready to go tomorrow afternoon.
Are these few days your favorite days of the year?
Favorite? There's a lot of favorite days out there. I enjoy this, so I mean, honestly, it's just kind of keep moving on to the next thing, whatever it is. So I enjoy every aspect of my job. You know, so, and that's why, you know, hopefully I'll be in this position for a little bit unless someone wants to get rid of me. So, but it's out of my hands. So I try to do the best I can with the opportunities that I have each day, try to make the most of it, and just try to make good decisions on behalf of everybody in the organization.
Do you even enjoy talking to the media?
Who said that?
Thank you. All right, there you go. It's Nick Caserio, GM of the Texans. So
fascinating.
That was an interesting press conference. I will say they're not always there was some vintage Caserio, but there's a few things to get to there.
Yes,
that we'll get to in a sec. First, let's peep the super chat. B Bake on the soup.
You ain't never hate.
Swarm. This is for Mike. It says, Mike, can you please teach me how to talk as much as Caserio does without saying anything at all? I'd like to become a U.S. congressman in the near future.
Well, it's a good time for that right now. I will say, though, Landry, and you and I are probably on the same page. Like, you can usually read between the lines on even the most boring press conference people, but I thought that had like a little bit of everything there. I thought there was frustration. I thought he like gave you some real nuggets and then went back to the word salad, but then randomly gave you the nuggets again. I mean, I thought there was an excellent question. I don't know who asked it, but excellent question about, hey, is there one player who you were ready to pick who was available at 25 who is still there? And Caserio said yes.
Jonathan Alexander, I think, asked it.
That's a really good question that got a really good answer. I don't know how many GMs across the NFL talking tonight are giving that kind of anecdote. Like that's pretty interesting because now we're like left wondering like, okay, well, who is that? Who is that player? That's a very specific piece of information.
Now, you know how my brain works, which is kind of dangerous, but you know, there's a lot of people in the chat saying what Caserio looked pissed and maybe he was tired. I don't know. Did you pick up frustrated, pissed off vibes, like disappointment from Caserio?
I sensed a level of I sensed some irritation. It sounded to me like there were a couple of players that they targeted, probably not around 20, but higher than that, like in the maybe 10, 12, 15. And they made some calls and they just weren't able to get it done for players they really like. And I still wonder if they would have picked Matthew Golden and or Donovan Jackson had those guys fall in just one spot. He seemed a little frustrated because he had obviously been on the phone with a lot of different teams.
Do you think it's possible Nick Caserio got overruled today?
By who?
D'Amico.
No, not on draft stuff like this. No, I don't think so.
You don't think so?
No, because wouldn't like
so you think the tie goes to Caserio
on a draft situation? Yeah, like
we'll see what we do tomorrow if the guy's there. I mean, I don't know. I'm just playing along with the people.
That would surprise me. You know more about their working relationship than I do, but I feel like
I don't know who gets final say.
Yeah, but I would think on the draft that Caserio as the personnel guy, like that's kind of his show, whereas the roster and such is D'Amico, and who plays obviously is D'Amico's show.
Yeah, we're 800 deep right now, and it feels like majority of people in the chat feel like Caserio's appeared a little bit frustrated, pissed off. Now maybe that can be as easy as things not going the way that you'd hoped. But I don't know. Like there was a lot of, I mean, God, he's hanging his hat on like the worst players on the team. Like that's
Jared Patterson reference. We had a Xavier Hutchinson reference as well.
Jared Patterson, Xavier Hutchinson, and Henry To'oTo'o are your examples.
Yeah.
I mean,
we had cross sport analogies. Your favorite, Oklahoma City, thrown in the mix as well.
Yeah, nobody thought they knew. Yeah, I don't know. Like
I do have a specific question, Landry, for you, because I know we're going to spend time thinking about, the guys who went before the Texans were to pick at 25, whether that's Tyler Booker or Gray Zabel, Abuka, Golden, Jackson, etc. What about some of the guys who went in between 25 and 33? And I'm specifically thinking about Josh Connerly or Josh Simmons, the two Joshes. Connerly goes to Washington at 29. Simmons goes to Kansas City at 32. Any regret about, because I would have taken either one of those guys at 34. No. I know Cody hates Simmons.
No, I'm good on that.
I like Josh Connerly. He was a big recruit out of high school.
Yeah, I'm good on that.
Okay.
Yeah, I was fine with it. I had no problem with the trade back. I do think the Atlanta thing is interesting. That's an interesting pill to swallow. Yeah, if they get a first round pick and the trade back, and maybe there's some frustration there. I don't know. Maybe he's just tired. I think it's possible. I think Nick Caserio probably gets up at 5 a.m.
Yeah,
and probably is in bed at like 9.
So if you're Nick, and let me say this, Landry, this is important. So those trade value machines. The Texans trade with the Giants. So this is the big trade of the night, going from 25 to 34. On the trade value charts, the Texans got excess value across the board, whether you're looking at like the Jimmy Johnson one, the over the cap one, the Pro Football Focus. The Texans got the better value of the deal, but it was more of kind of like a, A-, B+ kind of range. Whereas I haven't looked at what the grades have been on the Falcons trade up with the Rams, but that's got to be like an A++ for the Rams in terms of excess value. So is Nick maybe frustrated that, okay, I like that I'm picking at 34 and I have a better selection of players, but man, what if he's thinking, why didn't Terry Fontenot call me? I would have loved to have an extra first round pick in 2026 in a more talented draft, and I've got a very good football team here.
I mean, there is a 0% chance. There's an absolute 0% chance. I don't know. I don't know. I can't give you 0 and 100% chances very often, but I can promise you can look at it either way, 0 or 100%. It's either that is either the answer. There's a 0% chance that when Atlanta made that trade, that Nick Caserio didn't have and D'Amico Ryans didn't have some sort of reaction or some sort of like dialogue, like, damn, that's crazy. 0% chance that there was not, and there's a 100% chance that there was a reaction. They absolutely had to have seen that and at least said, damn.
Yeah.
I didn't know that they wanted it that bad.
Well, because when that trade was announced, before everyone knew who the player was, but we knew that the Falcons had given up a first-round pick in 2026, I think there was the collective feeling across the NFL of like, who is Atlanta trading up for? Because they have a quarterback in place and we're past like blue chip territory. I mean, I guess it kind of makes sense. James Pierce has blue chip talent. We'll see about everything else. I happen to think the Falcons are their use of assets is. I actually think that's a fireable offense. I know Terry Fontenot drafted Michael Penix, and I like Michael Penix, but their use of assets between the Kirk Cousins Penix thing, between this, like they're just all over the place.
Yeah, they have no direction.
Yeah, I mean, they have a direction. They can't value assets properly. Like they wanted defensive ends, they got defensive ends, but they gave up way too much for them. So now it leads to the question of Landry. This is something that needs to be discussed. The Giants traded up for Jackson Dart, who's a quarterback, obviously. Could one make the argument? Could Nick Caserio have squeezed them a little bit more? Again, the trade terms being you get the second round pick, which that's the swap, and then you get the third round pick this year and the third round pick next year. Is there any argument that, kind of like Luka and the Austin Reeves, like hypothetical people keep talking about, like if you had demanded the Giants give up a second round pick next year, do they all of a sudden not make the deal? I don't know.
Yeah, that's really the frustrating part, and I think you bring up the best point, Mike. And this is why I like talking to you, because your expansion's incredible. But that's really like what's crazy is it's not just so there doesn't have to be an either or, but it's not just that the Rams got a first round pick. It's that the team that traded with you drafted a quarterback. Like there's usually a quarterback tax. Like that's usually the situation. Like the Texans trading up for Will Anderson. The case was that they draft CJ Stroud first, because if you were trading up for a quarterback at 3, then it would cost more, because teams know how desperate teams are to find quarterbacks. So not only did the Rams get what they got, but the team that you traded with was going up to get a quarterback.
Now, Landry, I do not think the Giants would have given up next year's number 1 for Jackson Dart. I want to make that clear. I don't think even with the desperate situation Joe Shane and Brian Daboll are in, I don't think they would have given you next year's 1 for Jackson Dart. But is there a discussion about next year's 2? Maybe. And it also could be a situation where, keep in mind, when the Texans made this trade, people on the Giants side, some of them I saw were like, man, like, okay, interesting move, but man, they gave up a lot before we knew about the Atlanta thing. So we could live in a world where the Texans got pretty good value that we can question, and the Falcons independently made a horrible value trade.
Yeah, and that's fair. And I mean, based on what Atlanta's done in the last couple of years, like it's almost like whenever Bill O'Brien would give out a contract, it's like, well, that's not the starting point for the next thing. Like when the Browns gave Deshaun Watson the contract they got, like, it's not like that's the starting point. It's just a dumbass franchise doing dumbass things. So
yes,
comparing what Atlanta gives up to another team might be kind of dangerous, because as you've said, they use bad assets. And to be honest, when I saw that Atlanta made the trade, I didn't even think that them using a first round pick was possible. Like
agreed.
I was a little bit surprised after the fact to see that. And it was actually in the chat when me and Stutz were talking about it. So yeah, it is something to keep an eye on, but from the Texans standpoint, I mean,
just real quick, as EA points out in the chat, the Giants do own the top pick in the third round of this draft still, number 65. So you could ask the question of, like, could you have gotten that pick as part of this trade? But I do want to make it clear, like, if the Falcons thing hadn't happened, just looking at the Texans trade on all of these charts, from Jimmy Johnson to the analytics, the Texans won that deal from a value standpoint.
Yeah, it's almost like you go get you go buy something and you feel like you got a great deal, but then you find out someone else found it somewhere, and all of a sudden you're questioning your deal. So I do agree with that. And that's kind of why this is a good exercise to talk out, because you're watching the draft, you're reacting to the draft. I'm streaming during the draft, all that. And then as it happens, it's like you're comparing it, but the initial reaction was never, wow, this is a bad trade by the Texans. It was, this is a good trade because none of their players were there. And we were talking about the trade back. So yeah, I think Atlanta might just be really dumb. On the super chat, the Flash Sage says, Wanted Burden at 25. If we get him at 34, I'll be extremely happy. Best receiver in this class, in my opinion. I asked this earlier. And I've talked about this throughout with Luther Burden. The question about Luther Burden, it might be a non-negotiable for them because there's questions about maybe effort or something. I've heard, which I think is kind of a non-negotiable with the Texans. But the other thing is that the value, maybe they consider him a little bit more at 32 than they would have at 25 with Burden.
I think that's always possible.
And my hypothetical with Burden has been, if Luther Burden in the final game of the 2023 season, if Luther Burden had torn his ACL and not played last year, I think his draft stock might have been higher.
It's an interesting hypothetical.
I mean, it was that bad of a 2024 for him. Like everything fell off. And before that, like he was the guy. So I don't know what that really says, but I wouldn't bet on them liking Burden, but who knows? I think one of the Higgins would be a little bit more likely, or a running back. I could see a running back.
Travion Henderson's on the board.
Judkins. Andy says the Eagles defense is going to be a problem. Tomorrow is going to be a fun day in Houston for the draft. Day 2 is always my favorite. Yeah, who would you like to see them take with that first pick, and who do you think they like? Nick Casario says maybe there's someone they like.
You know, I don't know that this guy fills a need because their secondary is so talented. I think one of the best in the league. But a guy I'm slightly surprised didn't go tonight is the safety from South Carolina, Eman Wari, because not only was he very productive, he was also tremendous at the combine. Now, I know people would be like, God, they're going to draft a safety after Bullock and trading for Gardner Johnson. That's the guy I like. I like Travion Henderson. I'm sure from a football character standpoint, that's somebody that they really...
By the way, he's going by Trey now.
Oh, he's going by Trey. I didn't know that. Okay, Trey Henderson. Okay. Trey, yeah. That's the guy that they would like. I do like the tight end from LSU, Mason Taylor. I think he's going to be a good NFL player.
You're good genes.
What I worry about, now this is a guy who I think they will consider here at 34. The tackle from Minnesota is one of these guys, like I watch a lot of Big Ten, as you know, and he's somebody like you just see him on kind of a mediocre team and you're like, this guy looks like an NFL tackle prospect. Todd McShay has talked about him a lot. Ariante Ursary. He's a guy who's got, good size, 6'6", 331. And I wonder if you just look at the tackles now that so many have gone, if he's like the last possible projection of like, could he be a plus NFL starter at tackle? That's someone I would think about as well with this next selection at 34.
Yeah, I'm a Judkins guy. I'd like them to take Judkins.
You've always been big on running backs and them adding more running back.
I have him, but I like him because I think I just think he's really productive. I think he's shown that he can be a compliment guy, and he's also shown that he could be all first team SEC his freshman and sophomore years. So I think that's pretty good.
Another guy who I think they'll consider is Jalen Noel from Iowa State. I'm actually thinking of smaller receivers.
They visited with him.
Yeah, so that's someone I think that will be in consideration here at the top of the second round.
They're going to have good information on these Iowa State receivers. I think you keep a close eye on that. I'm assuming that you get good information no matter what, but and this isn't nobody's talking about. Nick Caley and Matt Campbell actually grew up within 10 miles of each other, and they're 3 years apart, and Campbell's dad was actually a high school coach. Nick Caley always said he idolized high school coaches, so I would wonder what their relationship or dynamic is, and I'm sure he's probably doing his homework on that. I do like the possibility of drafting a day 2 receiver more than I did like getting Golden at 25. I know Golden's really popular here, but I was never really as high on Golden. I know some people will say, well, you watch a lot of Texas games, you just assume that you like all of. No, I like Banks, I like Barron, I even like some of the Texas guys still left, but I never felt like with Matthew Golden that he was just like a number 1 receiver. Like if you would have told me even against Ohio State, I said this was like if me and my dad were sitting by each other watching the game, and he said Matthew Golden's going to be a top an NFL first round pick, I would have bet him $100 and said that's not going to happen. So I just never really felt as good about Golden as a lot of people did.
Well, that's what I kept thinking about him because I was texting with some Cowboy fan friends of mine this week, and they were talking about Golden at 12 because that was a rumor. And my thought was, I like Golden. He was good at U of H. He was really good at Texas. He ran 4.29, which almost kind of like skewed the perspective because watching him, I felt like, okay, he's got enough speed and quickness, but he never came across as a 4.29 guy. But it boils down to what you said. I can't envision Golden as a number one receiver in the NFL, which is why I'm still surprised that Green Bay took him at number 23. So I would have considered him at 24. But yes, the downside would be I couldn't envision him as more than a number 2 NFL receiver.
Yeah, I couldn't at all. And it just became a situation where it was like, okay, this guy, it's a weak wide receiver draft. So where are we going here? What did you make of Loveland going over Warren? Colts stay put and they get Warren. What did you make of that?
I was not surprised by some of the late draft buzz about this. I've watched basically every game Colston Loveland has played. My sense was that people in the NFL seem to like his blocking more than the reputation was at Michigan. Really good receiver. I mean, the dude stepped on the field as a true freshman. It was like catching touchdowns on the road against Ohio State. He was their best offensive weapon with garbage quarterbacks this past season. So as far as a pass catcher, I have no questions about Loveland. And the other thing, Landry, I thought about this a bunch because the Jets at 7, were debating, do they go Warren? And I like Warren. The guy caught like 111 passes, but I think the age is a thing as well. Tyler Warren spent 5 years in college. He's 23. Colston Loveland played 3 years at Michigan. He's 21. I know we talk about this more with baseball and basketball players, but even in football, I think age is a thing. So I was not surprised that the Bears went with Loveland at 1 they went with him as tight end number 1. And I wonder also that there's a feeling with Caleb Williams that he needs someone as a first option who gets open. Colston Loveland gets open.
Yeah, the talk was with Ginty. I think Indianapolis, if they would have had their choice, they would have taken Warren. But I get what you're saying, and maybe it's just kind of like a fit thing. I mean, and I think Jeremiah, that's kind of our starting point. He had one number 6 on his 150 and one number 7. So it, as surprising as it was, I don't think it was like overly shocking.
It did not shock me, and I agree with your instinct. I could easily see a scenario where the Colts were just thrilled that they would have picked Warren over Loveland anyway, and he happened to fall to them.
Yeah, that was kind of the worst kept secret for sure. Travis Hunter goes to the Jags. That one was kind of surprising.
It's surprising. Here's one thing that surprises me about it. We have talked about this draft for 3 months, and why wasn't this possible trade discussed more or just thrown out there, considering the kind of draft this was, if that makes any sense?
I don't really know. Like number 2 was real awkward. I guess like the more the possibility was someone trading up to 5 and taking Ginty. Yeah. No one was really talking about someone trading up and getting Travis Hunter. So
I understand why Jacksonville did it. Here's why. Listen, Travis Hunter is a blue chip talent. The guy is one of the most unique football players I've ever seen. I was one of those like many who doubted Ohtani doing hitting and pitching in the major leagues, and he's been able to do it mostly successfully. But this guy's not going to play 110 plays in an NFL game. I don't think that's possible. And so the immediate question is, they gave up all this for him. Is he going to be primarily a corner or receiver? Because I think he has to be primarily something.
No, you have to primarily be something. I would think receiver. Like if I would think that's the decision, I would think receiver. But he says he wants to play both. But I'm with you. Like there has to be primary attention, like to where you're playing 90% of the snaps on one end, and then maybe like situationally in the other, and maybe in emergency situations that kind of increases. But it feels like receiver. And quite frankly, if Travis Hunter were only a receiver and that's where his focus was, stranger things have happened than him just going number two overall in the draft. Yeah. Given the talent, especially in this group. I don't know if Jacksonville's trying to make a splash or if they felt that was just like a massive, massive need. You never know with the Jags.
So the GM Gladstone, who's he's 34 years old. He learned under Les Snead the F them picks scenario, and now the Rams are doing a different
corny quote. I know how to function like this. Shut up. Dude.
So I think that the lesson, if I'm just guesstimating Landry, is James Gladstone has a feel of like, okay, ideally over the long term you want to have more draft picks, but sometimes it's worth quote unquote overpaying if you can get a true blue chip talent. This was a draft where you probably had realistically 2, maybe 3 pure blue chip players, but the consensus 2 were Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter. And the Jaguars, who have lost football games for a long time, they got one of those blue chip players. I am with you. If I were them, I would play him at receiver opposite of Brian Thomas.
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. So the other thing that we've kind of been asking, and shout out to everyone who joined the SNL stream. We went from 6:30. We went at 4 to 5, and then 6:30 to the end of the draft. Was Nick Caserio upset? If Nick Caserio was upset, give me 3 things that you think he could have been upset about.
Let me just go one by one. I think he's upset that he thought there was a chance going into today that he could trade up for either Kelvin Banks or Tyler Booker. Number 2, there could be frustration that the Falcons gave up way more one spot later to the Rams than he got from the Giants, kind of out of nowhere. And then number 3 could be the frustration that Matthew Golden goes at 23. Donovan Jackson, who they could have probably plugged in easily, goes right before them at number 24. So those 3 things: couldn't trade up, the Falcons trade, and a few players they like went right before their pick.
Yeah, I think that could be where he's frustrated, or he's just tired. Or he's just
could be all of it. Could be frustrated, tired.
Yeah, maybe he's just exhausted. He's not used to this. Last year, they just kind of got to sit around and figure it out. This was probably his most stressful draft. If we're thinking about, if we're really thinking about, like, of all the drafts that Nick Caserio's had, this is probably his most stressful day one.
And I do have a point about that, Landry, that I think needs to be discussed a little bit big picture, which is, when you're a good football team, and they are, and you're drafting late in the first round, and you make a move, and I get why they did it. It's a move off of Laramie Tunsil. They got big contracts, the whole thing. And you do these things they did in the offensive line where they sign Cam Robinson, they bring in Ingram and Tomlinson. I think realistically, there's got to be the feeling that we have to be able to live with a couple of different options because we're picking 25th. We're not going to necessarily be able to draft this guy or that guy and plug him in. It could be you draft a lineman in the first round by trading up, or it could be you draft a couple of guys in round 2 or round 3. When you do what they did and you're not picking like 8th overall, they had to plan for multiple scenarios for this offensive line to be better than it was last season. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and I wonder if they think it's already better, just addition by subtraction. And coach, maybe. I mean, I would be kind of like, if they just wanted to trade up for an offensive lineman no matter what, I would feel a little bit weird about that. That would be a weird feel if there's like just, all right, we might trade up for this tackle, we might trade up for this guard. It might be realistic though, just because the offensive line is so bad. But I wouldn't want to get in that area. I will ask this though, if you're skeptical about Nick Caserio and what he could do tomorrow, I mean, did Henry To'oTo'o, the example of Henry To'oTo'o, make you feel better about it? Like,
no, but he probably could have used a better defense.
How about Nico Collins?
Yeah, Jalen Petrie, who they re-signed.
How about Nico Collins?
Sure.
How about Kalen Bullock?
Yeah.
How about Amari Lassiter? He's doing the BOB thing where he like praises all his back end roster guys as like big moves. Worries me.
It's almost ironic though, because my frustration with Nick, and it's turned out well sometimes, Nico Collins being an example, he's usually the guy moving up the board and giving up a lot of value on those.
Frustration with the Nico Collins trade is one of the worst, like nerdy things I've ever heard.
Here's the thing. I like the player. I just hated the value. And now at this point, it doesn't matter because he's been such a good player for them. Fantastic. But it's almost ironic in the context of tonight that Nick Caserio, a guy for 3 or 4 years, has been kind of making his money of moving up the board and wheeling and dealing and giving up a lot for players. And then he's kind of stuck moving down the board. Like this, it's like we've completely reversed roles with what happened on Thursday night in the draft.
Do you think there's any chance they go defense? Like if they're, you
I think everything, yes. I think everything's on the board. Yes, absolutely. Yes.
I mean, like the other thing is, and I know this is, I know it's a strength, but I mean, Will Johnson is, what if they think he's one of the better corners? What if they like him more than Barron? Like
that, then that's something that you would consider, because with Will Johnson, what Adam Schefter reported is the concern is his knee, and he was banged up this past season, didn't play a whole lot of games. But if you feel like the knee is going to be fine, Will Johnson in zone, and Will Johnson maybe later his career as a safety, is a guy who's made a lot of big plays in a lot of big football games.
Yeah, and I'm just throwing this out there, but I mean the top value on Jeremiah's board, the top offensive player right now is Shedeur Sanders at 20. And then after that, it's Mason Taylor at 29, Trey Henderson. And then we get to Burden and Judkins. The other thing, like, I think there's also, tight end. I guess you feel like you have a tight end room, but the upside is kind of moderate. And there's a chance that a year from now, it's a huge need. They did visit with a couple of tight ends. So when you start stocking up picks and adding picks, maybe you're more willing to kind of swing for the fences on like non-immediate needs, which could be something to keep an eye on. I mean, right now, I doubt that they really discussed Warren and Loveland leading up to this draft.
Agreed.
Because Caserio said the board was smaller. There has to be someone that they like most, whether it's like Arroyo or Taylor or something like that. It's also kind of an adjustment where if you say the wide receivers aren't very good, well, tight ends can catch passes too.
Yeah.
And they can also help you offensive line if they are willing and able blockers. So I
wouldn't land
a tight end tomorrow.
Yes, I wouldn't be surprised with one of the third-round picks if you don't see like a Terrence Ferguson, a Gunnar Helm, a Harold Fannin Jr. out of Bowling Green. That would not surprise me with this tight end room for the Texans.
And I mean, they visited with Arroyo, and the way that Caserio described like tight ends lining up wide and all that, I think that's something to keep an eye on. Tate Ratledge seems like the people's pick right now. It seems like Tate Ratledge out of Georgia is the most popular name of the offensive linemen. And then
I'd be okay with that.
Yeah.
Fairchild as well.
Yeah. That's kind of the makeup that they're kind of looking for.
But you raise a really good overall point, which is, and I know everybody says, like Caserio said earlier this week, that they draft best available player, and that's not really true. But now that the board has not fallen in the way that they wanted to, and I think that almost everyone would agree the board did not fall. Like, they have a lot of picks. Draft good football players. Don't get stuck with like, oh, you desperately need a lineman. You got 5 picks. They'll draft at least one lineman or 2 tomorrow. But if there are guys that you like tomorrow, whether it's, I don't care if it's Mike Green or a defensive tackle, if you really like someone who you're surprised is on the board, you can draft that guy. You're not gonna go bad by drafting good football players.
Yeah, it always kind of drives me nuts this time of the year where it's like the draft for need or draft for like, but in all seriousness, there's always a balance to it. Like, it's always a funny question because it's like and I think that's basically what Caserio is saying when he says it's fluid. Is he's basically saying, yeah, anything can happen. Like, yes, like it's not, nothing's true, nothing's set in stone. What's true today may not be true tomorrow. But with all that said, we know there's some sort of balance. When you have the extra picks, you can truly draft best player available.
Yes.
And when you have a decent roster, they have a decent roster too. So,
and you said it, Landry, someone like Will Johnson, and I think that depends almost solely on the medicals, but that's someone who, if they're good with the medicals, then you have to consider him at 34 if he is there.
I also think it's an underrated weakness of this team. And I know the obvious weaknesses we talk about and we have talked about for months, wide receiver and offensive line, but I think that corner depth 3 down is kind of an issue. I know Stingley played all of last season, but before that, we know what the concerns were. Lassiter missed a few games. I know you brought in Ronald Darby. I don't know if that makes you feel that good. Jalen Petrie, I know he's called a nickel corner. I don't think you want him in coverage, or you want to be able to mask that or whatever. So, you look at the back end and the depth of positions. The corner depth is a problem, and it was kind of a problem last year. Fortunately, you had two guys that played really good at the top, and you were able to find new roles and find ways to adjust. But I think it's an underrated weakness that you could probably address now with these extra picks.
And Landry, I also think of it along the lines of people think about the team that's playing in 2025. It's more to me when you think about going pure best available, what happens a year from now? For example, they traded for, CJ Gardner-Johnson, so he's there. But in 2026, is he there? Jimmy Ward, MJ Stewart? Might it make sense to go with Eman Wari from South Carolina if he's somebody they didn't expect to be on the board? Because in 2026, you were like, okay, if this guy can be like a Pro Bowl player, which based on production and the combine stuff, maybe he could be, then it's worth having that discussion.
Well, I mean, and I think there's also like a lot of people like, and I say a lot of people, a few, like they question if Kalen Bullock can be like an every down guy or if he's like someone that is more situational. Like I know that there's a lot of optimism, but hell, there was a lot of optimism about Jalen Petrie after his rookie year as far as being a safety, and he's a damn nickel linebacker corner, whatever you want to call it now. So I know we feel good about Bullock. I'm not saying you feel bad, but let's not forget that we've seen a safety have a good rookie year, and then that happened. And I mean, Eman Wari is an absolute freak. He was one of those guys that we were talking about at 25 before the Gardner-Johnson trade is someone you could take.
Yes.
Well, I kind of eliminated that at 25 after you brought in Gardner-Johnson. But if you're trading back and you have these extra picks and the dude's still there, I mean, it could be a lot worse than having three really, really good safeties and another guy that you have as like a nickelback. So, yeah, I don't think you completely eliminate the Eman Wari thing now at this point, especially given the fact that you don't know if Bullock is for sure an every down safety or not.
It builds strength on strength, right? The Eagles have done this. I know the Giants are a horrible team, but they did this tonight with the Abdul Carter pick. Like the one thing they have is a really talented defensive line. The Texans, I think it's at this point, like it would be surprising, although possibly great if the offense was somehow better than the defense, but you keep building strength on strength. There are worse things to do. I do have a quick question for you, Landry. I haven't been on social media for the hour that we've been on.
I haven't been on today.
That's a great job
like
by you.
During the draft, like just a little slide. Dude, I've been streaming for now.
I like it.
7 hours.
Do you? The Texans are obviously one pick away. Do you think the Browns will take Shedeur Sanders at 33?
I don't.
I do.
Okay.
I do.
Okay.
I was just curious because it obviously impacts what the Texans are faced with here.
Okay. Well, go ahead and do that. I mean, I
think they take Shedeur.
I mean, I don't think it's I mean, look, they have extra picks now. So, I mean, if you want to swing for the fences and try to figure something out, go ahead and do it. But I don't, but let's see. They need offense, man. They need offensive firepower. I think they take the best skill guy.
Okay.
Whether it's a running back, wide receiver. I don't know that they're going to go tight end. But
let me ask a variation. If the Browns do not take Shedeur Sanders,
trade back again. Yes, let's go.
Do you think Shedeur Sanders will be the 33rd overall pick tomorrow? Because you know how this goes, Landry. Because everyone has the night to think about it. This happens all the time every year. Like the guys who are left on the board now, people have a lot of time to talk about trades and everything. To where if the Browns don't go with him, I still think there's a decent likelihood because, like, I know a lot of people naturally will be talking about Shedeur Sanders, but at this point, like this seems like his value here, the early second round. At this point,
this feels more appropriate.
Yes.
This feels more appropriate. And I thought the Golden thing kind of felt a little bit more appropriate too. But yeah, it does feel a little bit more appropriate for sure. And I mean,
I do wonder who the other, I know this is not specifically Texans related. I don't want to derail it, but it relates to them because they're at 34. The Browns are at 33. Again, my feeling is I think Cleveland will go with Shador. Part of it is because Andrew Siciliano did this interview with Myles Garrett a few months ago after he came back. And Myles was asked about this by Andrew, and he said the Browns told him what the plan was a quarterback, and he really liked the plan. And I don't think that plan they told him was Joe Flacco and Kenny Pickett.
They also gave him a hell of a lot of money.
They did.
Yeah, that's like when Alex Rodriguez signs his contract and says, "Yeah, I really like what they have going on here in Arlington with the Rangers, the worst franchise in baseball." Like, yeah, they gave him a hell of a bag, Mike. Yeah. What a terrible theory by you.
No, I thought. Well, we'll see what happens tomorrow. I brought this up on my shows on Sirius XM probably at least 5 times in this last month and a half.
Yeah. So, like, they gave him a bag, man. They gave him.
Oh, they did. I listen. That was the biggest part of it. No question.
No question. So I don't know. The Shador Sanders. I don't. He's definitely the next quarterback to go. Like, there's not like any threat of that. So
yes,
it's just but yeah, it's kind of Will Levis-y. And Will Levis was
exactly
33. Will Levis was 33. It was the Texans' original pick.
I believe that is correct.
33 or 34.
Yeah. Let's see. 33 overall. Yes.
Yeah. So that was. Oh yeah. Because there was Did someone lose a first-round pick that year or something?
Yes, I think maybe Miami did. Somebody did.
Yeah, because 33 was actually the second pick of the second round.
Yeah.
So yeah, and it was originally the Texans and Arizona traded to Will Anderson, then they traded to the Titans. So
yes,
yeah, so that was when that happened. The quarterback went there. So yeah, it's kind of Will Levis-y.
I'm thinking that it's a very, very similar dynamic heading into tomorrow night because I also think like you take a quarterback at the top of the second round, it's not nearly as much pressure.
The super chat from Mark, he says, Landry, I'm shocked they didn't take Campbell, but this draft is deep and it fell how I expected. I think they're going interior offensive line tomorrow and weapons. Talk to me, Landry. Draft didn't come our way as we talked. Didn't take Campbell. Well, the problem with Campbell is that they almost committed to playing a base defense with Petrie as opposed to the 3 linebackers, which maybe I was making the wrong assumption. But I thought that the Petrie thing was an adjustment to Christian Harris not being ready. And it's an adjustment that maybe went their way to where they feel comfortable enough to play base defense like that long enough. So I don't hate the idea of Campbell, but it almost didn't make sense if you're going to commit to playing. And Petrie was playing 100% of the snaps, a large portion of it. So I don't know about that. You think they're going to take O-line tomorrow and weapons? They have to. It has to be offense with maybe a little bit of defense, but 32 will be interesting, and then later on will be too. But I like where they're at when it comes to day 2, and in large part it's because I didn't think the bank stuff was real.
They were just drafting too low. That's the problem. I'm sure they would have loved Banks, but again, that goes back to when you trade Laramie Tunsil, you have to have a fairly clear plan on what you can realistically add, sign, draft for 2025.
Yes. And that's
I would have been surprised if they had taken Campbell. That's not somebody I was thinking too seriously about this team, even with the Alabama connection.
Yeah, that would be that'd be kind of a wild decision.
I mean, they have linebackers. They're not the best linebackers in the league, but they like Al Shire, obviously. Harrison, year 4. Toto does make a lot of tackles. There's probably an injury concern there with Campbell as well. Who knows what the medicals were there?
Yeah, the defense. I thought the real realistic chance of them taking defense at 25. I do wonder what they said about Walter Nolan. I would love to hear those conversations.
Fair.
But outside of him, I don't know that they were really thinking about anyone in defense. So
I have so much faith in D'Amico that defensively, other than linemen and secondary guys, like they can figure out linebacker. I'm thinking about rushing the passer and covering guys. Those are my two focuses.
This was the way that I said it yesterday with Stutz, like talking about that. And I think it's the complete opposite on the offensive line now.
Yes.
Yeah. But I said that if the Texans traded up for Walter Nolan, I would think that he's going to end up being a Pro Bowl player. And if they passed on him, I would feel like, well, he must not be that good. I mean, that's just how much trust I have with their evaluation on the defensive side of the rock. Now on offense, if they took the number one tackle, I would be like, he might suck. It's just kind of the lack of balance between those two sides of the ball.
I think it's a very, very fair point. And I also, as the people in the chat have pointed out, I neglected to mention the signing of EJ Speed at linebacker as well.
No, they're making fun of that. Did you catch the awkward moment where Will Anderson was asked about him and it was kind of, you didn't see it?
I actually did not see it.
Well, someone asked Will Anderson about EJ Speed and he like just randomly stopped talking and was like, so the theory was that maybe he wasn't at the voluntary workouts and Will Anderson thought he wasn't allowed to talk about him, but it was an EJ Speed question. Will Anderson was just really, really caught off track.
That is funny.
He's like, yeah, like you said, he's good. And then he just stops and he's like, You haven't seen this yet?
I've not seen this. This is a bad. Okay. Where was I?
Right, dude. You were probably solving freaking like you're probably lawyering. Hold on just a sec. This is going to be. I'm actually taking joy in the fact that I'm experiencing this with you for the first time because
I can't believe I missed this.
Oh, this is right up your alley too.
I mean, I pride myself on keeping track of everything that's going on. But maybe with the voluntary stuff, maybe I was somehow off kilter. Who knows?
Yeah, and I mean, it wasn't like a big thing. It was just Will Anderson going up there and talking. But I'm very excited to get your reaction here because this is right up your alley. All right, hold on just a sec. Oh my God, I can't believe you haven't seen this. This is going to be lovely.
EJ Speed.
This is my idea of a good night. This is the perfect way to tap off the super streams. Let's pull this up real quick. Hurry up.
And EJ Speed's the guy who knocked the Texans on a podcast last year.
Yeah, he's the Colts fans hated him.
They did. That's right.
Back in the building, man. Got to get right. I'm excited to be back. Yeah, man. It's really just been more faith-based character guy, but I think he's really good today. He was like, we can't stop till we get a bull on the ring. And I think that opened everybody's eyes and gave us a new perspective.
The energy in the building.
Tyler Booker, his mentality.
Between you and CJ, knowing that you all, been here.
There you go. It's right after this.
Yeah, man.
We're talking about
it's really just been more faith-based.
Ready for
you know what I'm saying? Making sure that our mentals are good.
Glad I'm
anything.
This with you.
Last year,
just wait.
Going into year 2, you get a lot of noise, a lot of people saying a lot of things, and we all just get the time to really just sit back and really just get our minds right and really just chill out and do things that we love to do, man. And he's been traveling doing this thing, and I love that for him, man. And just talking to him, he's in a really good headspace, and he's been here the whole time, working out with us, making sure that everybody's good and stepping into that leadership role even more than before. And I could just see the fire that he has in him, man. And it's just being contagious throughout the whole building.
That last conversation when we meet the press in Kansas City, I know it was something you saw. Does it keep coming back, or does it?
To my coach about it today, that feeling like, and for us, no matter how we get on the field, because I'm just so excited for next year and what this team, Miko hit it on the head today, and the team can get what they want, man.
It was very instrumental and important to your rookie season.
A great help for me my rookie year, man.
Over to me.
Yeah, block out the noise. This has brought you this far.
Where is it?
Yeah, and other teams and stuff like that. So I'm excited. And I can't
wait. It is.
No matter how much money they make, they're
on a hunt.
And the work, it show up every Sunday.
Maybe they took it out.
It was
no way.
Cornerstones for our defense every Sunday.
I would have.
Excited to keep rolling with them. How much money they make, they're going to go out there and make plays. Them accountable as well, and going out there and doing our job. That's just been my emotions, and I'm programming where they want to show. Like, it's fun, man. Football is have when you want to build something special. You have special guys and special human beings in the front office, and
dude, I think they took it off. This is a video.
Crazy.
This isn't the live stream. I guess you got to probably pick up the live stream, dude. It was that awkward. I would have taken it off.
Okay.
It was really weird. And then
so, was he asked a specific question about EJ Speed, or was he like midstream talking about something else when it came up?
He was asked about EJ Speed.
Okay.
Here. Now we're on a mission.
We are on a mission.
Oh, here it is. Here we go.
The anticipation has built up.
Yeah, so I think they took it out. I'm not sure though. I'm not positive. All right, so here we go.
Season heading into this season, what did you come up with?
Man, my emotions been everywhere. For me, those last two playoff games, like for me, I'm like, you got to do that every game. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's just been my emotions, and I'm like, bro, like going into this
I would
division
not have
I
tried
see
to
for our
find this
team,
with anyone else.
division I see for the defense is like the sky's the limit. Like, if we come out balling like that, nobody can touch us, and it starts now. And it's been nice to see everybody in the locker room, everybody being here, even the vets. And that just shows how much they care about the program and where they want to see the program go. And like one guy I got to highlight, like I had my highlight with Aziz last year, CJ Gardner, man. Like,
here you go.
Today was my first day meeting him.
Yes, this is,
and he is everything I knew he would be, like competitive, talk smack, and I love it. And we need those type of guys in the locker room that lighten, to lighten everybody's mood a little bit and show like it's fun, man. Football is fun, and he brings that energy.
What does he bring to that secondary, though, that can translate this year to a new level?
Yeah, man, that juice, his energy is contagious, and I felt it today while we were running sprints and we were conditioning and stuff like that. He's very competitive, and to play in this defense and to play our style and our brand of ball, you got to be competitive and you got to have a little edge to you, and I think he has all those things.
The last several years on the opposing side, but what does EJ Speed bring to the second level of this defense?
Yeah, he brings, like you said, everything.
What?
Yeah, great play.
no idea what was going on there, but the theory is he's not there. Maybe he thought that he's not allowed to talk about him because the rules are weird.
That was as if he's like a coach, that you're not allowed to like reference guys not being there.
Yeah, I think maybe he just is such a rule follower. It was weird though.
That was my distinct sense in watching that. Is EJ Speed got enough cachet to not show up at these? Not that I really cared that much, to be honest.
I don't know, man. Kind of feels like they might value that. I don't know.
I would think so. Yeah, the NFL's like the military, so
yeah. I don't know. Oh well, man. All right, so day 2 tomorrow should be exciting. We've pretty much covered everything, Mike. I know it's late. I appreciate you for rolling through. I'm gonna get some rest, get ready for tomorrow, and greatly appreciate you for joining me.
This was fun, by the way. I will be out there, and I'll join you guys and hang out on Saturday.
Yes, Mike Meltzer's coming to Carbach. You be there too, 11 a.m. So Mike Meltser will be
in the flesh.
In the flesh, reacting to a very active day 2. My gosh, what a day that's going to be.
Indeed.
All right, man. Appreciate you.
Have a good night.
All right, there you go. We got the great Meltzy joining us at Carbach this Saturday at 11. Texans Cap, I think, is going to be there too. So we're going to have a lot of people. We want you there. Be sure to roll through, subscribe, like, ride along. SNL live tomorrow, 4:00. And then the draft starts at 6. So we'll be live at 5:30 and we'll take you through the very end. Appreciate y'all for coming through. Always remember, when it comes to this Texans stuff, we're all in it together. Mark, real quick on the super chat, says, I think a lot of teams reached today, to be honest. Texans are sitting good. Board's looking nice. I think we will surprise this year. Henderson, KW, etc. Yeah, I like them drafting day 2 as well. Whether they're drafting day 2 or not, we're all in this together. Appreciate y'all for rolling through. Happy draft day. Happy draft day 2. It's already here, baby.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the Locker Room on YouTube. You know what it is. Let's get it. Ayy, locker room.